Hello everyone, Sigs here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Mekgineer Thermaplug Encounter in the Gnomeregan Raid in Phase 2 of the World of Warcraft Classic Season of Discovery from a Healing Mage point of view. I will go over some of the boss mechanics and how to handle them, as well as some Healing Mage specific rotation. Starting off the fight, as always, I do like to throw a beacon on the main tank and then sit down and drink so that we can start the fight with full mana. You do have a little bit of leeway with this fight between when you hit him and when you actually get put in combat, so you could even beacon a little bit later if you wanted even more time before you have to refresh the beacon. Now, the main thing here with this fight is that there's going to be bombs coming out from all of these pillars, and there's these big red buttons that you can press to stop the bombs from spawning. You do also get 20% mana back at the cost of 30% of your life from clicking a button. So personally, we have the ranged DPS deal with most of the button clicking and bomb cleanup, so I'm free to just focus on healing the people who need heals. Because of that, I can click the button whenever I need to get mana back, so at the start of the fight, I generally just dump as much mana as possible to get under 80%. So that clicking the button will put me back at 100, so I usually spam 4 Arcane Blasts for maximum damage just to speed up this phase. And after I click that button the first time, we go into a little bit more of a conserve mode here, so we just spend our clear casting proc on arcane missiles, usually a pretty good idea. Keep regeneration up on the tanks who are taking damage, as well as anybody who has dots, taking fire damage from standing in a puddle or getting hit by a bomb. And continue to arcane blast, and then spend the missile barrage procs whenever they occur. That's the kind of pink-purple parentheses that appear in the middle of the screen sometimes. It means I have a missile barrage proc, so again here, after 30 seconds, we can click the button again, so I am getting close, but I see that there's a bomb spawn happening in about 1 second, so I want to wait and see if it's going to be on this 6th pillar, in which case I could have stopped it right there. Since it's not, I click it, I get my mana back, go ahead and put a beacon on somebody who's taking a lot of damage, and go back into Arcane Blast, and when we get a Missile Barrage proc, we spend it right away, keeping everybody nice and healthy. Now, honestly, it depends on your group, but often the players are so spread out from running around trying to click the buttons that I find little value from mass regeneration. However, there are times later in this fight where it's going to become very useful. So even though I'm not using it here, I do have mass regeneration instead of Living Flame. And when you get the boss to 50%, he phases. We actually get him under 50% while he's doing a mechanic, so we have to wait for that mechanic to finish. I go over and click the button one more time here, just as we are waiting for the phase to end. And now you have these intermission phases, 3 of them in total, where you can let your mana regenerate. This is a good time to use a bandage to top yourself up so you don't have to waste any mana. And you want to go into each phase with as much mana as possible. So starting off, we refresh our beacon on the tank, go into double Arcane Blast. We do get our Missile Barrage proc, so we spend it as soon as we can, keep the tank nice and healthy. And we are going to use a free action potion here when he does his first AoE application of the Frost stacks. Now I do have bombs coming over to me here, so wasn't paying attention. I do turn around and Fire Blast one, which is kind of a waste of mana, but it does need to be dealt with, so it's good to help out when possible. And now we have a little bit of healing to make up here. We did just use our free action potion on that first AoE. The total number of Frost stacks out on each player is going to determine how much damage the boss is doing to the tank, so we want to keep those stacks low, which is where the free action potion helps. And again, just maintaining beacons, casting Arcane Blast, and spending Missile Barrage procs when possible. Now, we did have another AoE hit go out here, so this would be a good time for mass regen. You just want to target it on a player where it's going to hit all the other players within 30 yards, so I cast it on a melee player there. Get a lot of beacons out, get everybody topped up, which is great. And I haven't been clicking the buttons as much as I could have been for mana because there's been a lot of damage going out and it is hard to find a time to go and click sometimes, but we do have a bomb spawn right behind me on this button, so I click it, get the mana, stop the bombs from coming out, go ahead and apply a mass regeneration to the melee. Now we get more bombs coming out here, and I cannot click for another 15 seconds, so I just have to move away. Unfortunately, I do detonate that bomb there, and you definitely don't want to touch those frost puddles because it will give you a stack every second that you stand in it. And again, higher stacks equal higher damage, and it gets really hard to heal. So it's getting a little chaotic here. Thankfully, we phase him at 50% just in the nick of time, because as you can see, my mana is getting very low here, as I wasn't able to play as efficiently and click the button as often as I would have liked to, just because, again, it's hard to find like a 5-6 second window where you can just not heal anybody to run over and click a button. But thankfully we come into the next phase topped, and I do rip and evocate there, so halfway through the fight essentially, and we're back to full mana, which is good. So kind of rinse and repeat. We get the beacon up on the tank, go into our rotation, thinking about going over and getting that pillar back there if nobody else can. I could use Blink to get there. It does waste a lot of mana, but, you know, it's better than having bombs running around. Thankfully, I see that somebody else is going to go and get it, so I can just come over and get this button for mana, and I get really lucky that the bombs happen to start spawning there, so we do cancel that. And then it's just back to healing, so again, Beacon on the tank, spending Missile Barrage procs every time I get them, otherwise just casting Arcane Blast, trying to not get too high on stacks because I don't want to burn through too much mana unless I absolutely need the extra healing. And we do need to get an interrupt on that ability there, which as a mage you do have access to counterspell. If needed, it does take mana, so it's better if somebody else can do it. But thankfully that gets interrupted, keeps the healing requirement down, which is good because this is such a long and mana intense fight. Button's back up, we click the button, we get some more mana, going back to healing. One other thing I didn't mention is when to use either Arcane Power or Presence of Mind. So I kind of use it as just like an emergency heal button. If people are really low and I just need an extra tick of healing while I already have beacons out, then I will just use Presence of Mind for an Arcane Blast, whenever that may be, which I think is what happened earlier. But continuing on with the fight, it gets really messy here. The bombs spawn again on this pillar. Nobody's really over here besides me, and I can't click it, so we're just trying to push the phase and get away from these bombs. You don't want to stand in those puddles. You take increased nature damage debuff, and it's just not a good time. So we do have somebody go down. Thankfully, we have a B-res. We burn it, and that is phase 3. So pretty much the same as the other phases. Just interrupt the boss when he goes to do his AoE nature damage ability and deal with bombs in much the same way. Now, going into phase 4 here, we are pretty low on mana, so I'm going to run over and go for the button right away. And really what I should have done is use my Mana Jade earlier in the fight, and then during one of the intermissions when I was going to evocate, I could have crafted a second one and then evocated to get back to full mana, and then had the Mana Jade back up again after 3 minutes. So you can get 2 Mana Jades in this fight, certainly, potentially even a Mana Agate. But I do use the Mana Jade here finally. Back up to 65% mana is pretty good, and we can click the button again in about 10 seconds. So same deal here, there's 2 Arcane Blasts, we do Arcane Missiles on the Missile Barrage proc. And in phase 4, he does all the mechanics from the other phases, so we do get a little short fire breath there. Make sure to get out of the way of that so that we're not taking the fire damage over time buff. And there is the AoE that needs to be interrupted. I counterspelled it because nobody else had one up, they said in comms, so I went ahead and kicked it, even though it took mana, and clicked the button right after. Now, Beacon on the tank. Tanks do get trucked on this fight. Dirty is a great tank. He does not take a lot of damage, but, you know, your mileage may vary depending on who is tanking for you, so you definitely want to always keep a beacon on the main tank and just keep healing as we see here. Now, our healer does go down, and we do B-res him. Mishi actually onked when he died before I said that he was B-resed, but he actually just onked, which was great. So we do have our B-res up. We want to get that other healer up for sure. And he's getting low. And this is where you don't want to panic. You just have to keep doing the bombs. You have to get this interrupt here. And I'm getting very low on mana and kind of panicking as well because I don't know what else to do. Again, should have managed my mana better throughout the fight. Used the Mana Jade earlier. Could have gotten a whole extra Mana Jade usage in. Had more mana at the end here. But we're doing what we can. Throwing out a mass regen. Just getting out as many beacons as we can for the last little bit here. Get a PI right at the end. That little bit of extra damage is going to top everybody up that much quicker from our arcane damage. And now, with the big boss defeated, the little boss pops out, and we just have to finish him off. So, I don't have any mana, just hitting him with the wand, and thankfully he falls over, and we are all good. Dead boss, everybody in the raid alive, and that's how you do it. So, that's this fight. I couldn't really cover everything as in-depth as I would have liked to, but I just wanted to kind of rewatch the footage. And just give a quick rundown of kind of what is going on in my mind. Maybe go over a little bit about some of the mechanics for people who haven't seen the fight or who aren't as familiar with all of the mechanics, and then just touch a little bit about some of the healing mage stuff too as far as the rotation. It's pretty simple at this point since you get a lot of procs and you just want to spend your missile barrage and clear casting procs basically as you get them while maintaining your beacons on targets who need it or who are going to need it, so that kind of dictates your rotation on its own most of the time. But beyond that, just let me know in the comments if you have any questions about anything specifically. I'll be happy to answer them. I'm definitely not an expert. I'm still learning myself, but I do seem to perform fairly well most of the time, so thought that some people could benefit from seeing this fight and just hearing a little bit about what you should be thinking about as a healing mage. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you found it useful, and good luck in Gnomeregan. Take care and have a good one. Peace.